Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to discuss exceptional topic that is deeply complex and has affected countless lives. The situation in the Gaza Strip. Total area is about 360 square kilometers, equals 365 square kilometers, which is about 141 square miles. Its shape is long and relatively narrow, about 41 kilometers long, and its width ranges between 6 to 12 kilometers at various points. Our goal here is to foster understanding the conflict in Gaza by looking at the historical context, the current humanitarian situation, and the ongoing efforts toward a more peaceful future. This is a story of Gaza conflict with many layers, and we'll do our best to navigate it with the care and respect it deserves. It shows the uprising of the Palestinians against British occupation and Jews migrants. To understand the present, we must first look at the past, as the map shows the conflict of Palestine and Israeli people. The history of this region is long and deeply tangled with the histories of many peoples. The conflict between Palestinian and Israeli army we see today has roots that stretch back over a century, involving competing national aspirations, historical grievances, and significant international involvement. Following the 1948 Nakba Arab-Israeli War, the Gaza Strip came under Egyptian administration. Then, in 1967, after the Six-Day War, Israel took control of Gaza, along with the West Bank and Golan Heights. This marked the beginning of a military occupation that would shape the lives of generations of Palestinians. For decades, the situation was marked by tension, uprisings, and a cycle of conflict. A significant shift occurred in 2005 when Israel unilaterally disengaged from Gaza, withdrawing its settlements and military personnel from within the Strip. However, Israel maintained control over Gaza's airspace, coastline, and the movement of goods and people across its borders. 2 years later, in 2007, following an internal Palestinian conflict, Hamas won the legislative election win to rule the Gaza Strip. In response, Israel and Egypt imposed a strict blockade on the territory, citing security concerns. This blockade has had a profound and lasting impact on every aspect of life in Gaza, severely restricted the movement of people and goods, isolating the population, and crippling the local economy. 2 years ago, in late 2023, the world watched as a major conflict erupted, one of the most intense in the long history of this struggle. On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas abducted 251 people from Israel in its attack. As of October 2025, the last 20 living hostages were released. The total number of hostages freed, alive or as bodies, Hamas launching rocket toward the settlements around Gaza, as well as other places inside the occupied territories. The Israeli army launched brutal attacks on Gaza Strip, which leads to kill almost 47,000. The Israeli army also killed 274 journalists and media workers killed in Gaza since October 2023, of which 269 were Palestinian. This is under pretext Israel restricts access because it says the security situation is too dangerous and independent access could hamper military operations or put journalists at risk. Critics say the result is a major information black box. Far fewer international correspondents, heavy reliance on local journalists who face huge dangers. This wasn't just another flare-up. It was a devastating escalation that left a deep and lasting scar on the people and the landscape of Gaza. Humanitarian consequences were immense, and the road to recovery has been incredibly challenging. Now, let's fast forward to today, October 2025, 2 years after that major conflict. What does life look like for the people of Gaza? The first word that comes to mind is resilience, but the second is struggle. The physical rebuilding process has been painstakingly slow. While some international aid has made it through, the sheer scale of the destruction was overwhelming. Many essential public services, like hospitals, schools, and water treatment plants that were damaged, are still not fully operational. The human cost is even more staggering. Nearly the entire population of over 2 million people relies on humanitarian aid to survive. Access to clean water is a daily challenge for most families. The blockade continues to severely limit the import of construction materials, medical supplies, and other essential goods needed for both rebuilding and daily life. A joint assessment by Food and Agriculture Organization, UNICEF, World Food Program and World Health Organization confirmed that famine classified as IP Phase 5 catastrophic exists in the Gaza Governorate, which includes Gaza City, as of August 2025. Why? It's especially dire. Why? It's especially dire. The ongoing military operations, destruction of infrastructure, agriculture, fisheries, markets, and displacement have severely disrupted local food production and supply chains. Humanitarian aid access is heavily constrained. Blockades, closed crossings, inspection delays, and security risks hamper the scale and speed of food delivery. Hunger weakens people's ability to resist disease, recover from injuries, or access medical care. World Health Organization notes that malnutrition and disease feed into each other. Reports of people going days without eating, skipping meals so children can eat, widespread acute malnutrition. Children, the elderly, pregnant and nursing women are especially vulnerable. Long-term consequences: stunted growth. Impaired cognitive development are significant. Aid agencies are warning of mass starvation if conditions don't change rapidly. The ongoing military operations have generated a large number of injuries: airstrikes, shelling, ground operations, and fatalities. Hospitals and health services in Gaza are under extreme strain. Damaged infrastructure, shortages of medicines, fuel, water, sanitation, and many facilities are partially or not. Access to hospitals is further complicated by movement restrictions, frontline dangers, and insecurity. Some hospitals in the north of Gaza were virtually malnourished and weakened patients. People suffering from hunger are less able to recover from injuries or illness. Medical supply stockouts, according to World Health Organization, supplies for malnutrition treatment are only sufficient for a fraction of need. Evacuation, ambulation of injured, with many roads damaged, impediments in moving patients from frontline bombardment zones to functioning hospitals. For example, evacuation orders to move residents from northern to southern Gaza City ahead of operations. Schools and community centers, with the help of dedicated local and international organizations, are trying to provide psychosocial support, creating safe spaces where children can process their experiences and simply be children again. Reports indicate that at food distribution sites, near hospitals or medical centers, large numbers of people compete for limited aid and dangerous crowding occurs. Although international organization provides support to the people of Gaza, individuals' non-for-profit organization Good Group Taikia provides direct support like food, shelters, and money for other necessities. Some fatalities or injuries happen among people trying to reach aid convoys. Medical staff report very difficult working conditions, treating hunger, trauma, and disease simultaneously under siege. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is extremely grave. Looking ahead, a cessation or significant reduction of hostilities to enable humanitarian operations and reconstruction. The ongoing military operations, destruction of infrastructure, agriculture, fisheries, markets, and displacement have severely disrupted local food production and supply chains. Humanitarian aid access is heavily constrained. Blockades, closed crossings, inspection delays, and security risks hamper the scale and speed of food delivery. Hunger weakens people's ability to resist disease, recover from injuries, or access medical care. Ceasefire and humanitarian efforts, allowing limited aid convoys to enter via Egypt's Rafe crossing. Aid organizations say this is far from sufficient. Gaza still receives less than 20% of the pre-war aid volume. According to the same analysis, over 500,000 people are trapped in conditions of famine, i.e., starvation, destitution, death in Gaza. Many more, over 1 million, are in the next worst category, emergency IPC Phase 4, and another significant share in crisis IPC. World Health Organization reports nearly 500,000 people in catastrophic hunger. Malnutrition, especially among children under 5 and pregnant breastfeeding women, is at rapidly worsening levels. Prices of staple foods have soared. Flour in some areas increased by 3,000% since early 2025. This has created a persistent humanitarian crisis. The economy, which was already fragile before the conflict, has been pushed to the brink of collapse. Unemployment rates are among the highest in the world, particularly for young people who see very little hope for a future with meaningful work. The fishing industry, once a vital source of income and food, is severely constrained by restrictions on how far boats can travel from the coast. Farmers face similar challenges, with limited access to their lands near the border fence. This economic paralysis traps people in a cycle of poverty and dependence. These programs are a lifeline, but the need far outweighs the available resources. The constant stress of living in such a challenging environment affects everyone, from parents struggling to provide for their families to the elderly who have witnessed decades of instability. However, in the midst of these immense challenges, the spirit of the people in Gaza endures. The scale of the crisis is staggering, with a significant portion of the pre-war population killed or injured. Displacement and shelter. Approximately 95% of Gaza's population, 2.1 million people, has been displaced, many multiple times. The vast majority are living in inadequate, makeshift shelters or tents, leaving them highly vulnerable to disease and harsh weather. Shelter housing is consistently reported as the #1 priority need. Famine and food insecurity. Famine was formally declared in parts of Gaza earlier in 2025. Humanitarian aid flows remain severely restricted and unreliable, despite the ceasefire. Aid agencies report major obstacles, with food supplies often running out and relief convoys being denied or impeded. Over 500,000 people are facing catastrophic levels of food insecurity. IPC Phase 5 and aid organizations have documented hundreds of malnutrition-related deaths, including children. Looking forward, the path remains uncertain. The international community continues to call for a sustainable ceasefire between Palestinian and Israeli army renewed peace negotiations. But for the people of Gaza, these high-level discussions can feel very distant from their daily reality. Their immediate hopes are for the simple things: the freedom to travel, the ability to find a job, access to quality health care and education for their children, and the chance to live a life free from fear and uncertainty. The situation in Gaza is a stark reminder of the human cost of unresolved political conflicts. It's a story of profound hardship, but also one of incredible strength and resilience. Understanding this reality is the first step toward advocating for a future where all people in the region can live in peace and dignity. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it's one we must continue to engage with, learn about, and discuss with compassion. The physical destruction of Gaza's infrastructure is near crippling essential services needed for survival and recovery. Destruction level. Satellite analysis indicates that nearly 78% of all buildings across the enclave have been damaged or completely destroyed. Homes, schools, hospitals, and commercial structures have been reduced to rubble. The healthcare system is devastated, with almost all hospitals and clinics having been damaged or destroyed. The few facilities that remain partially functional are critically understaffed, lack basic medical supplies, and are overwhelmed by patients suffering from war wounds and communicable diseases. Water and sanitation. The collapse of water, sewage, and sanitation systems means nearly half of the population accesses less than 6 liters of drinking water per day, which is far below emergency standards. The widespread presence of uncollected solid waste further fuels the spread of infectious disease. The debris generated by the destruction is estimated to be around 61 million tons, much of which may be contaminated with hazardous materials. The massive task of rubble removal is a major obstacle to any reconstruction efforts. The education sector has suffered widespread damage, with 92% of schools requiring complete reconstruction. Hundreds of thousands of students have been out of school for over a year. The economic structure of the Gaza Strip has collapsed, and the road to recovery is long and costly. Economic contraction. Gaza's economy is effectively non-functional. Unemployment has soared to approximately 80%, and nearly all households are relying on aid for survival. Reconstruction needs. An interim assessment by the World Bank, EU, estimated the total cost for reconstruction and recovery at around $90 billion. Financial infrastructure. Banking infrastructure has largely been destroyed, and cash shortages are common. The speed and scope of future recovery depend heavily on opening border crossings, ensuring security, and establishing stable governance. During the 2025 war in Gaza, the Israeli army carried out mass arrests of Palestinians, including civilians, doctors, and journalists, often during raids, at checkpoints, or in safe zones. Detainees were blindfolded, stripped, and handcuffed before being transferred to detention centers inside Israel, according to reports from the UN, Amnesty International, and other rights groups. Many prisoners were beaten, deprived of food and water, forced into stress positions, threatened, and tortured. Some were held without charge, without contact with families or lawyers, and several died in custody showing signs of severe abuse. A fragile ceasefire took effect in early October 2025, but significant political and security questions remain unresolved. Ceasefire and humanitarian efforts. A temporary ceasefire began mid-October 2025, allowing limited aid convoys to enter via Egypt's Rafe crossing. Aid organizations say this is far from sufficient. Gaza still receives less than 20% of the pre-war aid volume. UNICEF, WHO, and WFP urge a full lifting of blockades and safe, sustained humanitarian corridors. Israel continues to maintain military control over a significant portion of Gaza, including a buffer zone along the Gaza-Egypt border. Despite the peace plan calling for the demilitarization of Hamas, the group has been visibly reasserting its authority on the ground since the ceasefire. Hamas security forces have been seen managing traffic, providing some civil administration, and targeting rival armed groups, signaling an attempt to regain control ahead of long-term governance negotiations. The humanitarian situation is dire, marked by mass casualties, pervasive hunger, and the collapse of all life-sustaining services. You can follow us on Instagram as well as our YouTube channel, Helpful Hints with Amin, to watch other videos. Your support helps us continue our work. Stay informed, and thank you for watching, and stay engaged.